I am a 32-year-old full-time housewife. I have two boys, aged 3 and 5. Due to my husband's job, we live in the city. I myself am from the countryside, and when I was a child, I was always playing in the mud, catching bugs and crayfish. So I struggled with raising kids in the city. However, my husband grew up in the city, so he is against playing in the mud. Every time I find a mud play or crayfish fishing spot on the internet, my husband always rejects it. Don't engage in such poor-looking play. Doing so will embed a poverty gene into their DNA. Once, when my husband wasn't around, I took my kids crayfish fishing. They were so happy, and it made me happy too. One day, I bought some seedlings from a nursery I found. I thought I'd grow them on the balcony with them for educational purposes. When we got home, they happily told David about their day. And when it came to growing the seedlings on the balcony, my husband responded with a puzzled expression. Vegetables should be left to farmers to grow. As he said this, he glared at us planting in the planter. There's a special appreciation you gain when you grow something yourself. Our kids aren't fond of vegetables, but this might change that. They smiled and nodded in agreement. That I didn't receive such a foolish education, but I can eat vegetables just fine. He said it with a tone of sarcasm. My husband has never thought highly of my parents since our marriage. I grew up in the countryside, and my parents run a small restaurant. I only started going to fancy restaurants and bars after meeting David. Though my parents' restaurant wasn't stylish, they let me taste various dishes. The first French dish I ever tasted was made by my father. My mother taught me table manners, which I found annoying at the time. But I was grateful for her teachings when I dined out with my husband and didn't feel embarrassed. At first, my husband and his parents, Bill and Megan, were polite. But over time, they began to despise my rural upbringing and my family. This is why country folks are troublesome. Don't follow your mother's example or you'll be embarrassed outside. Use her as a negative example. I've always been one to avoid conflicts, so I just endured their comments. Fortunately, my kids love my parents' restaurant and eat more than usual when we visit, even though we can only go back about twice a year. This isn't French cuisine. It's country cooking. He would make such comments loud enough for my parents to hear? My parents never responded. Hearing my husband's sarcastic remarks always saddened me, and going home with my family became a burden. Then one day, my husband suggested inviting his parents to a resort hotel near my parents' place for their silver wedding anniversary. Since my parents wanted to see the kids, I agreed without hesitation. When I told the kids about the family trip with their grandparents, they were genuinely happy. On the last day, come to our restaurant. We'll treat you. I was honestly unsure. I wondered if I would be ridiculed with comments like, "You're from the countryside," or "It's not French cuisine." But I wanted to take my kids to my parents' cooking, which they love. So I discussed my parents' suggestion with my husband. Do you understand that my family is different from yours? I can't believe you even suggested it. Even though he mocked me, after venting his feelings, he agreed, saying, "Well, it's just the countryside, so I guess all the restaurants are the same. Haha. If you feel that way, you don't have to go. But our kids want to go, so why don't you eat out just your parents and you while we are there? There probably isn't anything decent around there. Haha. Where in that rural town do you think there's a restaurant that would suit my parents' tastes? But I guess it's not that big a deal, so I'll go. Haha." I was about to shout in anger. But remembering that our kids were sleeping in the next room, I held back. On the day, Megan was visibly excited, saying, "I was so excited about the trip with my son and grandchildren that I couldn't sleep last night. It's a special trip for their silver anniversary, so we booked a somewhat luxurious hotel and plan. Both my in-laws seemed very satisfied with the cuisine and the accommodations. The next day, after sightseeing, I told them that we planned to have lunch at my parents' restaurant. Couldn't we go to a restaurant after we get back? Our flight is at 4 o'clock, so if we go after, it would be dinner time. We want to go to Grandpa's restaurant. Fine, let's go. But if I leave any food, don't feel bad. Upon arriving at my parents' restaurant, my parents had closed the place temporarily to welcome us. My kids were very happy to see their grandparents. Seeing the many dragonflies, they started running around with the nets my parents provided. Catching insects is so unsanitary. That's why I said I didn't want to come. I didn't want to hear any more. So I stepped away and gave my parents gifts and vegetables grown by my kids. While my father began cooking, I chatted with my mother and watched my kids play. I'm sorry for inviting you to such a small countryside restaurant. I didn't want to embarrass you, but I really wanted to see you. Your father is so excited and has procured special ingredients, so I'm proud of the cuisine. From the bottom of my heart, I felt grateful, thinking I was raised by such wonderful parents. Everyone sat at the table, waiting for my father's dishes. First came the appetizers. They were more stylish than when I was a child. My kids had a delightful kids menu, filled with their favorites. What's this? It's so little. Are you planning to chew this 30 times to feel full? It's like a sumo wrestler's meal. Both my in-laws and my husband laughed together, while my kids exclaimed, "Yummy, yummy," enjoying their meals. Next came the soup, followed by the main dish. It was couscous, my favorite dish since childhood. It's a very delicious dish made by simmering lamb and vegetables in tomato sauce. When I looked at my mother with feelings of nostalgia and happiness, she smiled confidently. Then Megan spoke. Is this supposed to be French cuisine? I thought it was dog food. Diner chains are better. Seems like anyone can open a restaurant in the countryside with dog food. I can tell the taste without eating this. It's probably awful. You can mock me as a country bumpkin all you want, but don't insult my parents. If you don't like it, don't eat it. I'll eat it all. Everyone in the room fell silent at my outburst. Grandma and Grandpa always bully Mom. Dad does too. My father, who was supposed to be in the kitchen, was now beside my mother. If you can't appreciate it, please leave. You can't know the true value of a dish unless you eat it. No matter how you dress up the appearance. If the intentions of the creator and the producer aren't there, it's just for show. Today's couscous has our grandchildren's love in it, so there's no way it's not delicious. We grew these vegetables at home. We wanted Grandpa and Grandma to eat them. We kept it a secret, right, Mom? The children's eyes were filled with tears. I couldn't forgive my in-laws and my husband for hurting my loved ones. I will stay here with my sons. Even if we're seen as country folks, I want to cherish my pure-hearted sons and won't return. What are you saying? How will I eat? We have a company party next week and we have to attend as a couple. We can't bear to be separated from our grandchildren. If you're going to be selfish, then give them back to us. We don't want to go back. We want to stay here, right, Grandma and Grandpa? Of course you can stay here. You can catch bugs and fish every day. Cheers arose from my kids. It's good that they haven't started school yet. Come back home. This isn't a sudden decision. I've been enduring this for a while. I want to live here with my kids. Fine, I'll divorce you. I can't believe you like such a country place. Those aren't my kids. My husband stood up and left, followed by my in-laws, who glared at us as they left. You've become strong. Your mother and I always said you'd explode someday. But we didn't think it'd be today. You did it in such a grand way. Your kids are wonderful too. Truly, they are your kids. Everyone then ate the couscous together. My kids were very happy to be able to live here. Later, the divorce papers were sent by mail, and the divorce was finalized. My husband sent our belongings, and the move was completed. It seems that the bullying my husband directed at me turned towards his workplace, and he was sued and subsequently was fired. He now lives with his parents at their home. Although he started a part-time job nearby, it didn't last a year, and he appears to be relying on his parents' pension, effectively becoming a NEET. On the other hand, my kids seem to love the countryside life and run around covered in mud every day. I live happily, helping out my parents. In fact, 6 months later, I was introduced on a national TV cooking show as a former head chef of a top overseas hotel, becoming somewhat of a celebrity. But I'll tell you about that another time.